I have prepared a list of questions for my father to work on part C, which I have been working very long on this project. And he is here today going to have an interview with me. So, hi, Jeff, how are you doing?
Hi.
Um, Number one, have you ever taken out loans? If so, how much was your loan, including your term and the amount of time it took to pay it off?
Okay, so things were different, many, many years ago. So I had $10,000 in student loans. That's how much I borrowed through college. So my payment was $100 a month. I believe my interest rate was around 5%. But I just remember that I had $100 a month payment, which was $1,200 a year, and I paid it for 10 years. So I paid $12,000. So I paid $2,000 in interest on a $10,000 loan over 10 years. I can't remember if I made extra payments or what have you, but or paid it off earlier. But that's the extent of my student loans. I was lucky to only have $10,000.
Okay. Two, what's one reason taking out student loans would be a positive and one reason it would be a negative?
Well, there's many reasons that it would be positive or negative. One of the positives, I guess, is it gives students or young adults the ability to attain a college degree when perhaps they financially couldn't afford to do it without a loan. That's probably the biggest positive. However, it also has many negatives, and the negatives are that perhaps your degree doesn't support. Um, Basically, you're buying a degree, right? So maybe the degree that you get doesn't support the loan, right? So maybe it costs more than the degree's worth. So that's something that you have to take into consideration when you're going to college.
Mm-hmm.
Another negative is that you're borrowing money, and I think everybody needs to consider options um, to college that perhaps would include not having to take out loans. I think something like 90% of kids who graduate college right now have student loans, and there's a high percentage of those kids that get degrees that won't financially support them being an adult and having these loans to repay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Number three, why is it best to always pay more than the minimum payment?
So, if financially you can afford to pay it off, obviously making more than the minimum payment will pay the loan off earlier, and by paying it off sooner than the original term would also minimize or mitigate the amount of interest that you're paying on that loan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Four, explain from experience the importance of responsibility as an adult when you have to pay taxes, a loan, your house, food, car, etc. How is it easy to fall behind?
Well, I think that um, it's if you make decisions that allow you to live within your means, then it should you should make it difficult for yourself to fall behind. What a lot of people, the mistake that they make is that they overextend themselves. So prioritizing expenses is probably the best, most important thing an adult or a young adult can do when they're considering their financial well-being. So prioritizing what's important to you, what's important, what your expenses are, and then living within the means regarding the income that you make.
Okay. Number five, what's the number one financial responsibility as an adult in your opinion?
Well, I think that it's taking care of yourself, which would include housing, shelter, food, um, uh, giving yourself the ability to work. So
Transportation.
transportation. Those are the things that are when you're like I mentioned before, when you're putting priorities in place. That's where it starts, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then the fun stuff comes after that, right?
Right.
the entertainment and the things that you want to do in life, they only come after you've prioritized, the housing, the transportation, food, and so forth and so on.
Okay, last question. Number 6. What is the best way or trick to advise someone who is paying off a very expensive loan? What's one piece of advice you can give someone?
Well, I don't think there's any tricks, but I do think that if you can afford it, uh, something that young adults need to do is they need to, after they are employed, they need to start thinking about their future. And it's hard to do because there's only so much money being made and there's so many things that you guys want to do, right? So really saving while having a large expensive loan doesn't always make sense. What makes sense is making extra payments, paying more than the monthly amount, focusing on eradicating that loan as quickly as possible, so that you can start taking that money and putting it into some type of savings or 401k for your future. But allowing that, especially if it's an expensive loan, allowing that loan to linger for years and years and years, it just costs you more money and interest. So to focus on that and get it paid off, that's what's important.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Love you.
Love you too.